Ragefest 5 began in 2017, yet again with an actual storyline, and the turnout was even higher at 17 submissions. That's not even all the content that was produced, however, because in addition to Mark announcing a side series called Ragefest Echoes, Avraxis created a fun side project called Heirs of Rage. To hype up Ragefest 5, Heirs of Rage serves as a prologue to the contest story, and features Mark and other members of the community in a small game of about 6 chapters made in FEXP. Actually, I should say the characters are the hypothetical sons and daughters of the community members. Yeah, so I guess I have a fictional daughter now. Heirs of Rage contributed significantly to the Marky Joe canon, and will likely be remembered for a long, long time. Thanks, Avraxis & Co. Now we get to the big one, Ragefest 5. So, you mentioned you had to, overhaul the rules in Ragefest 5, so what were you going for this time around?
I was going to make it so that there's no way F***EXE could be accepted into this contest. I had to make sure I covered every fucking base, okay, maybe this isn't an explicitly stated rule, but it's an implied one, and here I write a little thing saying that, just because a rule isn't stated here doesn't mean you should make a shitty submission trying to get around the rules. I think I specifically said that, trying to get around the rules to make a shitty submission is prohibited, and we're going to use judgment to determine if it's disqualified or not.
So this contest had the highest number of submissions ever, 17, which is actually only 2 higher than Ragefest 4's 15. So these are some pretty huge numbers of submissions that you have to play. Does this get exhausting at any point?
Oh boy, that feels like such a planned question. Yeah, I mean, Ragefest 5, Ragefest 4, it took me a year to finish all the submissions. Ragefest 5, I was so high on energy and motivation that I was able to do it in just 7 months. And it had more submissions than Ragefest 4, so that should give you an idea of how much fucking fire in my belly I had. I was determined. And this Ragefest 5 was also the first time this was around the time I opened up my Discord server and I started to interact with people directly. And I think seeing people's excitement directly and seeing them discuss submissions really helped energize me, because I get fucking energized by ideas. It inspires me a lot. And I think that helped give me the energy to get through it quickly.
Now, on to the submissions. Ragefest 5 made an interesting change in allowing contestants to create up to 3 chapters, so that they wouldn't have to abuse multiple maps in one chapter anymore. This was also when hacking Sacred Stones was becoming much, much easier and streamlined. Until now, working with Sacred Stones was harder than Blazing Sword, so people mostly stuck to that when they were hacking. Unless you're FE Lover 3, who used Binding Blade 2 times for some reason. 4 submissions were outright disqualified this time, so let's cover those first. Hamlet's Tale by Yangfly is a rather uninteresting submission that you can't even play anymore because it was discovered that stolen assets were used in its creation. Oops. Next we have Asylum of Irony by Sage Mathis, which, while actually quite hilarious to see played, seriously, I burst out laughing every 5 minutes with this one. It had too many cryptic puzzles, bugs, luck-dependent fights, and it used 2 maps in one chapter to end up with 4 maps in one submission. Oops.
Then you got Asylum of Irony. That submission was the token shitty submission that everybody loved. And that's also where I brought in Mangs, kind of like with Lynn's Revenge. And this was a fucking hoot to watch. Watching me get so pissed off, and watching Mangs laugh at me getting pissed off, which is great.
A New Revelation by Volt Zero and the Real Ganon is in a similar boat. This one's interesting in that your enemies are the various avatar characters from the later Fire Emblem games. Chris, Robin, Corrin, and surprise, Mark from Blazing Sword. You remember him, don't you? Or her. You're allowed to choose their gender, too. Finally, we have Mark's More Precious by Ash, Threewool, Ponage Kirby, and General Straxus, which was not outright disqualified, but it was made with FEXNA, so it couldn't be voted on for the same reason as the XNA project in the previous contest. As for submissions that did make it in, first we have Sliver's Murder Time by Sliver! Big shock. FEXP allowed Sliver to insert funny joke images and meme sound effects. Unfortunately, the objective is to go all the way to the castle in the corner and then draw the boss all the way back to the stationary killing machine, formerly known as Budgie. So yeah, it's long, boring, and the fact that the player phase music eventually changes to a song about Pokemon Go doesn't help. And that's just the first map. The second map has green units that attack the player as well, and the third map is about what you'd expect from FEXP. Next up is Angel of Enragement by Lord Wolfram, another FEXP submission. Though it has lots of effort and nice artwork, it's not exactly the most interesting set of 3 maps, especially the last one that forces you to watch Swordmasters chip away at generals while priests are constantly healing them. I've seen that done 2 times before this, and one of those times was me, so very original. Next up we have another sequel, Tale of Pert 2 by, you guessed it, Pert. It starts with a very long scene where they retcon Avraxis' death in Heirs of Rage, and, you know what, the Marky Joe canon got really complicated with this submission, so I'm just gonna stick to the gameplay. It's a swarm of trainee units. I think the chapter endings are the most noteworthy part, though. Yeah, that about covers it. You let me down, Pert! Although there was that hilarious lamb chop animation. Get it? Lamb chop. It's a lamb that chops.
Then you got Pert's Tale of Pert 2, Meme Lords Across Time by Pert. And that was a fantastic submission. The only thing I didn't like about it was the story, but even that was like, you know, for the most part it was competently written. It's just Chapter 3 kind of just messed things up, but the gameplay was so tightly, like, well thought out, and the character balance was so good that, and like some of the design decisions were absolutely amazing. Like Pert is a great level designer in my opinion. Like that one bit in Chapter 2 where you have like those 2 NPC sheeps out like far away from your other units, and then you see the bosses walk in and kill them. Not like that shows you where the bosses are, while also instilling fear into you because you're like, oh shit, those fuckers just got mugged and killed. I better be careful, you know. It had such great effect, like emotionally, and also great effect in terms of like game design. You know, it was just such a fucking smart idea.
Saving the contest winner for last, the only FEXP submission remaining is it's called, let me make sure I get this right. Rana, and Rana proudly present Supersonic Emblem Ragefest and Knuckles All-Stars Battle Royale HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue at the Olympic Games Bros featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series. And I hope you like maps as long as that title. Rana made some big ones this time around. Playing through these took time, oh my god. At this point, the humor is starting to come from outside the playthrough.
Hello!
Hello, who are you?
Me? Huh? My name is Little Hand Bowser.
Alright.
You can call me Bowser for short. Give me those nips.
Stop, you're ruining the setup.
So, 3 of the submissions this time around were made using Sacred Stones as the base. First up is Julius's Revenge by Darman, a retelling of the final battle of Fire Move 4, and it's, really nothing to scream about. The easiest way to get Celeste killed is to just have Julius hit the Swordmaster with Berserk, and she'll do the hard work for you. The other 2 are pretty notable though, Human Armory by Pontagonist, is another take on the tower defense idea, and this time it actually works. You can spawn green units from a selection of classes and warp them anywhere, and you can decide how the unit's AI works as well. You'll need this to get Erica across the map and eventually seize the castle. I feel it was a little annoying that Erica and the other playable characters can barely scratch the enemies, but the way you play this is to block enemies from attacking by warping people in. It's a really nice idea, even if a little annoying to work with, and it did win the award for Best Innovation. Good work, Pontagonist! Aside from tactical nonsense, did any other submissions stand out?
Plenty. So we got Human Armory by Pontagonist Royalty and Generic Civilian 3. This was basically the Emblem Warriors of Ragefest 5. You know, it had a really interesting gimmick, and it was utilized well. There's some cracks in the design, if you will, but overall I think this was a very well designed submission, and they didn't try to do anything that it didn't know how to do. Like, Pontagonist is not a writer, so he didn't try to write a story. He just wrote a very basic story with royalty, and that was it. Like, he just set the context and let the gameplay do the talking, which I think was a very smart idea by Pontagonist.
You entered Ragefest 5 and came out with something very innovative, Human Armory. What gave you the idea for this one?
So actually, it was, I believe, I don't know, do you know Random Sword Master, or aka Luma Master?
I've heard the name, but...
So he made Ender Slicer's Escape in Ragefest 4.
Right.
He said something to me. So he's like a playtester for like hacks I make in my little like side server. I have like 5 people in there, and so like he was like talking about an idea that was similar to Human Armory, and I think like I ended up kind of refining that idea, and that was like basically what gave me the motivation for it. Yeah, that would answer the question. Yeah.
How was it watching Mark play this one compared to the last one?
Human Armory.
Yeah.
So at first, like when the first video came out for Human Armory, I was like, oh man, he's really not getting the hints for this. I actually talked to him in between that video and the second one, I'm pretty sure, and like I didn't give him any like specific hints or anything, but I was like, I feel like he's like too much in my head. You know, he was like relating it too much to my previous submission where I just had the one strategy and that was it, but that's really not how I designed Human Armory. So I told him like, you're like, you're thinking about this submission as if it's like I made it the exact same way as before. And once he did that, he actually like thought outside the box a lot more, and that led to the second video. So I guess the question was, how did I react to Mark's playing? So in the second video, like, he actually did post-production on the second video. And that was really fun to watch because he just kind of like solved the chapter and showed off all the things I wanted him to show off. And the only thing I had a problem with was the teleport thing for Erica. He kind of like viewed it as a bad thing. But to this day, I will still say that there are still ways to play around it that are not unfair. But yeah, it is a bit of a surprise in the middle of the chapter. So yeah, overall though, it was really fun to watch Mark play it.
How do you feel about the reception to Human Armory? Because it did in fact win the Innovator Award, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I won the Innovator Award, got third in Strategist, and the rest really doesn't matter to me because I was not really aiming for the rest of them.
Yeah, you got third in Architect.
Oh yeah, true. That's all. That was not me at all, though. I did not make the map. It was all Generic Civilian 3. Shoutouts to him. He's really good at making maps. But yeah, the reception to Human Armory was really good. I think Yeah, I know a few people were very outspoken about it, like Clock. But overall, like, people said a few things, and then they didn't really have much to say beyond that. I'm sure if like a lot of people played it, they'd have a lot to say about it. But I understand that Ragefest is just like you watch the video, this is kind of a tangent, but people kind of parrot Mark's opinions, and then it's pretty much over. So it was good reception, but it was mainly because of Mark, is what I'm trying to say.
The third submission to use Sacred Stones was my submission. Yes, I'm in every one of these contests, as stated. This time around I wanted to do something really different. I took my inspiration from Fire Emblem Thracia 776, known for being one of the hardest games in the series, and its unique mechanic in which you can kidnap enemy soldiers and steal their items. I always loved taking all the items I could and selling them for as much money as I could get. Replaying the game isn't 100% enjoyable, however, so I wanted to implement this as the goal for a ROM hack, and luckily, capture mechanics had been implemented in Sacred Stones by Tequila, so thanks for that, my man! Of course, I didn't exactly produce a perfect product. Though the first chapter went rather well, Mark quickly discovered the second chapter was next to impossible no matter what. I guess I just didn't test it enough. Mark decided then to let me edit the second chapter to make it less horrible, and then resubmit. An unprecedented move, as nobody else ever got the chance to edit and resubmit, which is why I'm completely grateful that he and the community took no issue with letting me do that. Still, the third chapter kind of goes out with not that big of a bang. Always room for improvement, I suppose.
And of course, Ragefest 5 ends with Ephraim 225 submission, Column's Big Heist, which was basically just very, very solid across the board. You know, the writing was kind of just there, but the gameplay was really well thought out. The gimmick was cool as fuck. It took the FE5 capture mechanic and did something new and refreshing with it, and it was a full 3 chapters. And aside from, like, the third chapter seemed kind of rushed, but the first 2 chapters, very carefully thought out, and obviously you had to fix it because chapter 2 was almost unbeatable without RNG. But point is that it was a great submission.
Moving on to the remaining submissions. Ragefest Chronicles by Molly Blazer has 2 chapters, one of which is a defense chapter. Now, it should be noted that defense chapters tend to be very easy to trivialize, and once you figure out that the unit you're supposed to be defending here can be recruited and holed up where she can't be attacked, this notion very much applies. The second chapter has you killing a pair of magic seals in a limited amount of time, so that's mildly exciting. The Roots That Bind by Alusk features another interesting new idea, a chapter with a day-night cycle in an homage to Castlevania 2, complete with a title screen matchup that, just like his previous submission, there's a specific type of enemy that only appears at night, and they are worth killing when the chance arises. And I gotta say, any chapter that lets me listen to bloody tears for half of it is worth a mention. Of course, that didn't stop the boss from being a real puzzle and a half to figure out. Good effort, but it ended up being a little too luck-reliant.
You also have The Roots That Bind by Alice. Another great submission. This was basically Trapped in Painful Places if it didn't have a shitty part 2. And The Roots That Bind is probably, like, one of the best design submissions. Like, it's got that right balance of, like, it's hard, but there's some flexibility. You have a decent amount of options, but not too many where you could just break the chapter. It was just a really well thought out submission, in my opinion. And I really could, like, what's the word? Alice deserves praise for taking the criticisms I had for his Ragefest 4 submission and just fucking nailing it in Ragefest 5.
Art of Ford by First Lieutenant Noguchi and Sneaky One, wow, is up next. It stars Ford from Sacred Stones, who made paintings of several notable battles and has discovered that the paintings have created reenactments of those battles with alterations. Basically, it's Super Mario 64 in a Fire Emblem setting. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. The first map is a survival map, which isn't that much different from a defense map. The second map is a snowy castle kind of map, and true to the hack's name, this map is a real work of art. It looks pretty nice, at least. Then the third chapter has one of the portraits lead to the world of Blazing Sword in a neat crossover to wrap things up, with some amusing writing. Not too bad a submission.
Art of Ford, great submission in terms of writing, not too much in terms of gameplay. I see Snakey1 a lot in my Discord. Well, not a lot, but every now and then. And he's a pretty cool guy. Him and his friend, I think they're like real-life friends. So, and they just work together on Fire Emblem hacks. And I just think that's so cool, that, like, they just work together. And they show their friends their hacks, too. And it just reminds me of back in the day when I did that with my friends. When I had friends. No, I'm just kidding.
Filling the quota of silly YouTube memes is Purge of Ouija by Tamburino. Tamburino shows a lot of promise with this one. Purge of Ouija has silly custom animations, especially Mark's animations, and even new sound effects. That's not something you see in every hack, especially since FE Builder hadn't been released in English yet. And, believe it or not, this hack not only has Ouija, but Donald J. Trump in it. I guess he is kind of a living meme. Please remember that this channel is politically impartial, and attempts to paint anyone as a supporter or detractor of any political figure is ill-recommended. The goal is to have Trump cover up all of the enemy spawners by building walls over them. This opens the way to Ouija, who is then killed with a sword made of spaghetti. Remember, I never make up stuff when describing anything YouTube related. Speaking of which, Tamburino eventually used many assets from this submission to make his own poop theme hack. Go try it if you're so inclined. What gave you the motivation to enter Ragefest?
So, I first started hacking a few months before it was announced. I heard a bunch of rumors. I knew there was going to be another one coming soon because there was a lot of chat in the Discord. I had started, doing my own thing. And, it was really bad at first, when you first start, the maps are huge. There's a lot of unused space in there. And so, at probably May of 2017, I kind of stopped doing my own thing and kind of started brainstorming what I could do for maybe a possible Ragefest submission. And then all those ideas got turned into what you did see at Ragefest 5 with, me, the Ouija, Snarky Foe, and all that kind of stuff.
So what gave you all of these ideas, or what did you draw inspiration from?
So, during the brainstorming process, there were a couple ideas that kinda I wanted something that didn't didn't just fly over people's heads. I wanted something to grab Mark's and the audience's attention, and so I thought I really like the humorous submissions, so I thought I'd base mine kind of largely around humor and just kind of randomness, and so that's where I got the idea of Ouija. That's where I got the idea of the portals, and then out of nowhere, during the development, I was thinking, hey, we got to seal up these portals. How about a wall? And then I said, walls. The president just got elected, and that's a bit of a hot topic, so might as well add that for a little bit of spice. And then there was also the announcement that you could put in multiple chapters. So the second chapter was actually originally not going to be there until after he said there can be multiple chapters, and I didn't want mine to only be one chapter. So I decided to do a second one. Of course, that one wasn't as good as the first one, but then again, there were a lot of things that should have been fixed before the original release. The actual, submission. But overall, I do feel pretty content with what I had.
How did you feel seeing Mark play your submission?
I was really happy. I was really satisfied. He of course, during the Severa recruitment conversation, even though he didn't, he did. There were a lot of good things, and I enjoyed hearing the good things, and hearing the bad. Hearing the criticism. That was, I didn't feel like he was actually kind of attacking me. I felt like he was critiquing it, and I feel like that really helps as a hack, or hacker, just a Fire Emblem hacker. It helps give you some ideas and kind of, make it to where, you don't make these mistakes again. Kind of helps you develop as a kind of game design kind of thing. And I also, of course, my favorite part was, when he just died after the Money Man gets shot. That was probably the best part.
Then you got Purge of Ouija by Tamburino. Basically, YouTube pooped Fire Emblem before Fire Emblem Poop came out. It featured me, it featured Tamburino, had Donald Trump in it, it had fucking Mario and Luigi from, the Mario CDI games. And, I think the humor is a little overrated, but I think this was a great start, and it was definitely a great submission, and it ended fantastically with the fucking gun to the Money Man. Are you fucking shitting me? Wait, you had a fucking gun the whole time? You just said I was contained. See? Whenever the submission just tries to be funny, it fucking succeeds. Whenever it tries to be serious, it falls flat on its ass because it's like it doesn't know how to be serious well. But fuck, man, that was great.
So there are only 2 submissions left to speak of. And as much as it pains me to say it, Blade Hero 22 returns with Crusaders of the Void. It's okay. I admit it. The quality of the submission has gone up since his last attempt. But the writing is... Alright, so moving on to Ragefest 5. In Ragefest 5, you created Crusaders of the Void. So...
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you created Crusaders of the Void. What gave you the idea for Crusaders of the Void?
An idea I never completely explored in my Ragefest 4 submission, because if you pay attention to the dialogue, he says, the main antagonist says, if you lose, you will be sent to the realm of the uncreated submissions, which in and of itself is a void of complete non-existence. And considering how badly Array of Randomness was programmed, that pretty much stood true. Because if Mark dies in Array of Randomness, the game doesn't end. He's just not on the map, so technically he just doesn't exist.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
It's in the playthrough. But the idea of him losing or cheating or something and then getting sent to the realm of the uncreated submissions to be an interesting concept. So why not run with it? Is not because he lost or won, but because he won in a way that the antagonist didn't personally agree with. And therefore, he would get sent to the realm of the uncreated submissions as a punishment. And considering that the theme with the main antagonist is some form of or law, if you can call it that. He was a prisoner of a law in some way. Not very deep, but I guess the general idea was I was looking at myself and saying, I didn't like how he beat my submission the first time, so I kind of want to see some kind of karma bite him in the ass for it, but at the same time, I don't really hate him.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Crusaders of the Void got the Kogasa Award, which for the uninformed means that his submission was surprising in how quality it was compared to the last submission. How do you feel about this reception? Do you think it was deserved?
Yes. I do feel as though this was deserved, because contrary to what people may think, I actually was going for the Kogasa Award in Ragefest 5. It's hard to believe that, but yes, I really was going for the Kogasa Award. I looked back at my Ragefest 4 submission, and I think this was a piece of shit, and I hate it. How low I set the bar for myself, I figured, okay, in Ragefest 5, 10 times better. And really show everyone what I am capable of, or what I was taught to be capable of, admittedly.
Yeah, I get you.
And that's the story of the Kogasa Award, and how that was one of my main goals in Ragefest 5, and I'm glad that I have achieved it, and people saying that I deserve it, all the better, in my opinion.
What was it like seeing Mark play Crusaders of the Void? Because you saw it in real time, like before.
Not this. It wasn't as tense as it was with Array of Randomness, because with Array of Randomness, that was the first time I had ever co-commentated with him, so I didn't really know what to expect. This time around, I knew what I was getting into, and I had already decided back then, well, not back then, I decided to commentate with him again. This time around, I'm going to be no holds barred with my humor and my commentary. As I said before, with Array of Randomness, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't want to seriously offend him. But after taking some time and realizing, oh, he probably thrives off of commentary or something along those lines, I pretty much removed my restraint and decided, you know what? I'm going full in. Like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm in it for the long haul, because I know this is probably gonna be a long ass submission.
Crusaders of the Void, great submission by Blade Hero. Blade Hero basically, he basically exposed his demons in Crusaders of the Void. Like, he admitted that when I said his submission in Ragefest 4 sucked, that he was pissed off and he fantasized about all these terrible things happening. And he also just resented the Fire Emblem community. And he puts all that bare in Crusaders of the Void. But he admits that that's his problem and not everybody else's, which I thought was a very self-aware thing. And also, I just enjoyed playing it, especially Chapter 1, which had great gameplay.
So, the winner of Ragefest 5 turned out to be one of the submissions that got played by Mark the earliest. DatBoiMatthew and Vandal Swiftblade bring us tactical nonsense, which could easily describe the entire contest, but hey, their victory in the contest is compounded by the 4 awards they won: Best Strategy, Best Writing, Best Portraits, and Best Use of the Story Involving the Enragement Ring, an artifact in Marky Joe canon created to control Mark's anger. We'll see if it actually works, of course. Anyways, the portraits are actually hand-drawn instead of pixel art, which is a very new concept. I can't think of any ROM hack at all that tried that before. Shoutouts to Owlware for her amazing artwork. Couple that with some very difficult gameplay, and you've got a submission that earns its #1 spot. The chapters here really are difficult, but as long as you've got a plan and don't get horrific luck like I do all the time, it's all very doable. So out of all submissions, the one that came out on top is Tactical Nonsense. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great submission. Like, probably one of my favorite submissions ever in the contest. The writing is absolutely fucking on point, and what blows my mind is that it was written by a fucking 15-year-old kid. That whole submission by a 15-year-old kid, of all things. What the fuck?
Wait, he was only 15?
Yeah, DatBoiMatthew was only 15 when he submitted Tactical Nonsense.
Do they get any younger?
I don't know. I think Cedar Nix was pretty young when she submitted to Ragefest 1, but I'm not sure.
Wow, 15 years old.
Yeah, like, I swear to God, man, DatBoiMatthew is a fucking, like, prodigy of some kind.
The Ragefest prodigy.
Yeah, like, there's no way... Like, when I was 14, I was drawing a shitload of comics, and they were simply... Like, the writing was... It was funny. Like, I still look back at it and I'm like, oh, these parts are funny. But I still had some fucking cringy moments back in the day when I wrote that shit. But DatBoiMatthew comes out of the fucking gate with some of the best writing the contest has ever seen. And it's like, what the fuck? This kid has like 300 IQ.
I guess he must.
Yeah, like, holy... And not only that, but, like, he also had a team. So that's another thing. I might be giving him too much credit because he had a team working with him. Like, he had Vandal Swiftblade, he had Alware, he had Xenix, and I think maybe a couple other people who helped him with his submission. But he did most of the work himself. The portraits were done by Alware, but he actually had portraits that were made prior to that. I don't know if they were by him or whatever, but later on he replaced the original portraits with Alware's portraits. And that's how we got Tactical Nonsense.
That's how we got Alware's amazing art.
Yep. That's also Alware's debut, basically. And I started to promote the shit out of her because I'm like, wow, you're an amazing artist, but nobody fucking notices. Let's fix that. And now, you know, she's on Twitter and getting a decent amount of followers. She's probably going to pass me soon. As long as she keeps drawing sexy Super Smash Brothers characters.
That much seems possible.
Oh, man. She drew a Palutena in a sweater, and I was just like, oh, my heart.
Alright, so you created Tactical Nonsense for Ragefest 5. What gave you the motivation to enter Ragefest?
Well, like most people, I just sort of came across Marky Joe on a whim. I saw one of his videos on my recommended one day. It was a really long time ago. I think it was Boss Rush from Ragefest 1.
Oh,
Maybe
I'm so flattered.
Yeah, I think it was Boss Rush. But I just kind of went in and checked it out, and since then I just followed Ragefest into Ragefest 4. At the time I came around, it actually ended, so I couldn't submit then. But even at the time, I wasn't much of a fan. I didn't follow him very much. I just kind of saw everything that he did and nothing else. But I never really thought I had any hope of submitting, but that's when Heirs of Rage came out, and that changed basically everything.
So what inspired the idea behind Tactical Nonsense specifically?
As I said, I was really inspired by Heirs of Rage, and because of that, I tried to pay a lot more attention to the lore, I guess, of Ragefest. And the thing that Heirs of Rage was about the ring, the engagement ring, that was going to be the main point of Ragefest 5. And because of that, I thought I could make something to add to the lore, like an origin story of sorts for the ring. Now, there were a lot of problems with that idea, mainly because Marky's version of the story had Raisin making the ring, and mine, it came from somewhere else. And also, I was scared because it sounds like a regular idea that anyone would have about adding to the story, so I was afraid that every submission was going to have my story, but it actually wasn't. I think only Rana made it about the ring, but besides that, I thought I could add to the lore, and I wanted to make it about the ring. It was actually the first thing I thought of the story, was how the ring would fit in. I actually had the story of Chapter 3 figured out before I even had any of the characters figured out.
So how did it feel watching Mark play your submission?
It was, as Everaxis said on the last one, it was very nerve-wracking. Every time, I remember the first part specifically, it came out very late in the night. I was about to sleep, but I just couldn't. I needed to watch it. So I just stood there like 3 a.m. needing to wake up like 4 hours from then, just waiting for the part to come out so I could see it. And I did, and I was very surprised because Mark actually told me that he was like super surprised with the quality, and that made me very happy. And no, seeing the support that came after the first part was surreal. I checked it the next day because I barely could stay awake. But when I checked it out, I was super proud of myself. And, that just made me kind of even more nervous to see if it kept up until the end, and I think it did, because chapter 2 kind of hurt a little bit, but after that I was fine. I really liked watching it. He did a good job playing it.